Is there a difference of approach whether you have a virtual versus a physical podcast, or is there, do you have to have a physical? Do you have to have a virtual? Like, do you have any thoughts on that? Like virtual versus.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously virtual is more accessible to the masses, right? If we're able to create these awesome in-house studios, you don't need to travel as much. You can still create an experience for your audience that brings value. For the interviewer and the guest, if there is that type of budget available, being face to face and shaking your hand is never going to be replaceable. It's
Yeah, I
not.
agree. I agree.
Now, my business is not going to be focused, at least in the foreseeable future, on the physical podcasts because there are limitations, right? There's huge limitations. And it's not even about the space of the equipment. It's about, I live in Tennessee and I want to be able to interview someone in Paris or in
I'm in Amsterdam,
Singapore
right?
or in Amsterdam, right? And if we didn't have this, you and I would be like, well, I'll catch up with you the next time I'm in Amsterdam, or hey, holler at me if you're close to where I live. So I don't think that there is a better. I think that it is just dependent upon your goals. And if your goal is to create value for your audience, then have a blended approach. Interview people that are local to you. Great. That's fantastic. That brings value. But if you also want a broader appeal, you need to be able to interview people who cannot travel to you.
If I've chosen myself a virtual podcast and my reason was very simple. Like, I love the fact that you can sit face to face with somebody, but I mean, I think in a podcast, audio is everything, right? I love the fact that people can see us on YouTube in the future, but the idea is if the audio is everything, and sitting down together creates great audio because you can control it. But nowadays, thanks to people like you, so many people have a good audio setup, a good setup in general. So the voice translates well. And that to me is just a big improvement and win for virtual. So to be honest, I'm virtual all the way. At the same time, I kind of feel like there's maybe some unfair prestige when it comes to a physical podcast. I was like, maybe that's in my mind because when you're physical there, you're more important, or I don't know. Yeah, it's a strange thing, but
I hear what you're saying. No, I like that you touched on that. I think that's an important thing. And I think that kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier and some of that fear and imposter syndrome of when you watch Diary of a CEO and they're sitting across from each other in LA. It does feel like I resonate. That resonates really deeply with me, that I do feel like when you're in person, it has it has this implicit feel that they have more money, they have more prestige because they are in a studio. But I don't think that precludes you or should hold you back from starting virtual, right? It shouldn't be a stopping point.
Yeah. And I'm gonna be honest, like the podcast I actually listen to a few of them, and oftentimes I listen to Joe Rogan, as the rest of the world. Specifically, if you're a podcaster, you have to sign a contract that you're going to listen to Joe Rogan, everybody. So, but one of the podcasts I listen to a lot is All In, and they just always convene remote, and it's just 4 screens, and that's the thing. Like the audio is great, so I'm a guy that even likes to watch a podcast. Call me old fashioned. I have friends that listen to it. I'm like, how can you listen to it? Like, I don't understand. I can listen to music, but not to a podcast. I want to see and touch it and feel it a little bit. That's my thing. But it speaks to the journey when you want to start as a creator, right? So what do you choose? Now, when we look at the fact of, hey, personal brand or even a business starting a podcast, I mean, there's so many benefits to our virtual podcast because you can invite so many more guests. Means you can actually create more episodes. That to me is the extreme value, I think, with a virtual podcast, that anybody can start it, but also there's so much value that you can produce for your audience. And isn't that all what we want to do? Just create value, right? So
that should be the goal. That should be the goal. It's not about you. It's about your audience. And that's how real creators grow, is not focusing on their personal prestige and importance, but how can you extract knowledge that's valuable to the audience that you're trying to grow with. And I think you made a great point. And the word comes down to velocity, right? You're with a virtual podcast, you're able to create velocity in production that you are not able to create in person. And especially for someone like me, I live in rural Appalachia. I'm in the mountains. Nobody comes to where I live. Nobody important really, travels here. But if I live in LA and Amsterdam, it would be a little bit easier to have that type of impact in person. But velocity is important. And I think I want to say one other thing before I lose this: listening versus watching. I think I have been toying with this idea for a while that podcast is just a distribution channel, right? Like I coach my hosts into stop thinking in terms of a distribution channel. Think about omnipresence. Think about, this age of multi-channel media where, it's on YouTube. You can listen to it when you go on the road. I can lay down in my bed, turn on my Google TV. And now, because I've subscribed to podcast, instead of going to Netflix on my home screen, it'll be like, watch the next episode of Diary of a CEO or of All In, because I also follow them, or whatever. And I can click that and watch it as if it was a television show. And the experience that Google has curated for me through their tools, the hardware tools, is that to me, now I don't even see it as there's a difference between going to Netflix, opening up this portal, and then watching the things that they have curated for me. It's right there on my home screen from YouTube. And you have the ability to reach a massive audience. And that backs me up to another point, this whole Jimmy Kimmel thing, right? We don't have to talk about the politics of Jimmy Kimmel, but I thought immediately, so what the network canceled your show? Why not just make it a web show? And if your audience wants to show up for you, they no longer have to subscribe to cable to get your show.